What is up, everyone? Brandon Ferst, aka First Report, representing the First Off the Bench podcast network. Everyone comes off the bench. We are first. Welcome into another edition of the NFL Weekly, week 4 to be exact. With me, as always, is my co-host, Raider Jim Martinez. You can find Mr. Martinez at Raider Jim 1090. How you doing tonight, sir?
I'm doing well, thank you. We got another great day in Southern California. It feels like fall when you step outside and it's 88 degrees.
Yeah, it's definitely. I've always felt like in San Diego, obviously the seasons do not matter. We don't really have change of seasons outside of maybe the sporting side of things. But I feel like late September, early October, always kind of the hottest around here. But I will not complain, and I don't think anyone should complain after everything that's going on, in Florida. Thoughts and prayers. Hopefully everyone out there is being as safe as possible as Hurricane Ian bears down, or is in the middle of bearing down on Florida. Unfortunately, it's a rite of passage for a lot of people in that area. Unfortunately, doesn't make it any easier. But before we dive into the games, looking ahead to week 4, take a moment to look back at week 3. I tell you what, Raider Jim, just when I thought I had a bit of a pulse of the NFL, the Colts beat the Bills, and there was another, or was it the Colts beat the Chiefs and the Dolphins beat the Bills? Just
That's
some
correct.
very interesting stuff. But what were your thoughts week 3 in reflection?
Well, I'm looking at 2-point conversions. I'm looking at Devontae Adams only getting 5 looks last week and things like that. But wow, it was a wild week, like you said. I thought the Giants were going to stay strong, and they ended up dropping that, by a touchdown. We all said, the consensus between the three of us was, yeah, the Bills got this. They're pretty much unstoppable. They're an offensive juggernaut, and they're just going to go rolling all over everybody. Well, made us look bad, didn't they? Lamar Jackson, who knew he had this much gas left in the tank?
Yeah.
Guy's playing like he did 4 years ago, and that's dangerous for everybody. The Bengals back into form. And how about those Vikings? I mean, it's like you said, I thought I had a pretty good idea going into week 3, and then no, not so much. But what a game, what a week it was. And it's just going to get more exciting, I think, now that things are starting to get a little bit solidified on what's happening, or maybe it's just going to stay wacky.
Yeah. I mean, that's 3 up, 3 down, essentially. And we've seen some wackiness every single week. We've seen a stunner. We've seen some wild, crazy finishes pretty much every week. Lamar Jackson, though, that's where I want to start. This is a guy who leads the league in touchdowns. And I don't mean leads the league in touchdowns versus other players. He leads the league in touchdowns if he was his own team. Or I'm sorry, he's tied with the Lions with 12 touchdowns. And I think we've kind of fallen in love, or not gotten away from Lamar Jackson, but our focus is Mahomes and Allen and Burrow, and Lamar Jackson, like you said, still has a lot left in the tank. And I also believe he's in a perfect situation.
Absolutely.
They built that offense fully around him. There was a lot of talk, in the offseason, does he have enough weapons? Well, guess what? Unless someone rips his legs off, he's got plenty of weapons. The guy has really turned a corner. However, we're 3 weeks into this, and with all due respect to Lamar Jackson, we've seen him on rolls like this, and then we see him wild card or divisional weekend, and maybe it's not all on him, but at the end of the day, the Ravens go home. So that's got to be a step or a goal for him this year. No matter what he does individually, it's got to be, let's get a playoff win, or let's make ourselves known in the playoffs, because lately that just unfortunately hasn't been the case for Lamar. And then myself, I'll be selfish and, just continue to be very impressed with what I've seen from the Eagles. Obviously, this past weekend, a very, very dominant performance. And you can talk about Jalen Hurts, you can talk about that offense all you want, but the star of this show is the defense. The defense had 9 sacks against Carson Wentz, 6 of them in the first half. At one point, the Eagles had over 300 yards passing, and the Commanders had -1. 24-8 was the final, very misleading score. I think it was a lot more lopsided than that when it was all said and done. But the Eagles and Dolphins only teams still undefeated as we look ahead to week 4, and we will get started in technically chronological order. We are, of course, recording Thursday, the 29th of September. We've got about 50 minutes until the Thursday night game goes off. That will be done and dusted by the time you're listening to this. But Sunday morning, either 9:30 Eastern or 6:30 Pacific, do the math in between, you will see the first London game, or the first international series game of the year. It'll be the Minnesota Vikings, 2.5-point favorites, taking on the New Orleans Saints. The over-under here is 43.5. I'll get this one started. Myself, personally, this is a tough one. The London games are always kind of, I don't want to say a coin flip, but they're not your normal. We're not going to the Superdome. We're not going to USA Bank Stadium, I think is what it's called in Minnesota. So that home field advantage won't really be there. It's going to be sold out. And another thing that you always got to think about is the field. Now, I've seen the way that they prepare the field. I'm just going to tell you, it is second class in that stadium, which is to be expected because it's a soccer stadium first and foremost. But the grass or artificial turf, whatever you want to call it, I'm sure it will be fine, but it's something to keep an eye on. We saw it, unfortunately, I believe it was Monday night. Was it Sterling Shepard just running down the field, and his knee sounds like it's not going to be good. Little turf monster came and got him. We might see that happen. But in terms of this game, I'm going to take the Saints plus 2.5. I'm up and down with the Vikings. They've obviously looked really good against the Packers, struggled against the Eagles, looked good against the Lions. Well, guess what? Back to kind of the struggles. And I think conversely for New Orleans, this is kind of a must win for them. They need to get themselves their ship righted, if you will, before the Buccaneers kind of run away with that division. We'll see how that goes. I'm going to take the Saints and the points. In terms of the over-under, I'm going to take the over. I just feel like a lot of these international games, they do tend to kind of go over more than likely. And I think we do see two offenses that are trying to get back on track and do get back on track this weekend. Two defenses that I'd say are average at best. But Raider Jim, what are your thoughts? The London game, Minnesota 2.5-point favorites as they take on the Saints.
I'll tell you the game for me is going to be, can the Saints protect the ball and not turn it over? No turnovers, they have a chance to stay in the game. However, they're not doing real good in that department. And I don't know, last week I thought Kamara was going to be back. They're saying he may be back this week, but even that, it's still iffy. If they don't have a run game, then that's a big task to overcome, because Minnesota's playing pretty good. I mean, they have Kirk Cousins, big animation of Kirk Cousins on the side of one of the buildings over there in London right now. So they're probably going to see a lot of Viking jerseys and things like that even. But overall, it should be a good game, competitive game. Protect the ball, though. If they don't protect the ball, that's going to be the thing. It's a 2.5-point spread. I'm going to have to go with Minnesota just by virtue of how New Orleans has given up the ball. And it's going to have to be, I think Minnesota covers, but I'm with you. I think it's going to go over. I think the fans back there are going to be very pleased when they walk out of the stadium.
Yeah, it's definitely for me a hope, taking the points with the Saints that, as you said, they do kind of figure it out in terms of holding on to the football. Easier said than done, but at the same time, they've been really bad at it this year, and it's kind of why they're in the situation they are now. Not ideal to have to kind of have a must win across the pond, if you will, but that is the situation really for both teams. I think Minnesota probably wants to get as many wins as possible because they know they're going to be facing the Packers, or at least chasing the Packers down the stretch. So time to shift our focus to the AFC West, and we will start with, unfortunately, the only winless team in the NFL. However, despite that, they are still going to be favorites in this one on the road. They are 2.5-point favorites at Denver. The over-under here is 45.5. Raider Jim, what are your thoughts? Raiders heading to Denver.
Yeah, looking back at week 3, the overall picture of week 3, if I would have asked you, coach, or probably 5 other people that I know, okay, AFC West, only one team's going to win last weekend. Which team is it going to be? Nobody would have said only Denver's going to win, and they're only going to beat the 49ers by 1 point. I mean, again, that speaks to what we're looking at this year in the NFL, or at least at this early part of the NFL season. Raiders -2.5. I think they're getting closer, but they've got to execute in the red zone. It got them again. I mean, Carr didn't play that bad of a game, but he hit Darren Waller in the hands in the end zone, and the guy dropped the ball. Plain and simple, he dropped the ball. Sure, there's questionable plays. The other thing the Raiders, where they're really lacking, and it's surprising, the secondary is still soft. They give up too many passes at all the different levels, in the flat, over the middle, short, medium, long. Their secondary is still soft, and the Raiders defense only has 2 sacks. That's ridiculous when you have got the people they've got, and Crosby can't do everything. But why aren't they running schemes that if they're going to double team a Max Crosby, you should be able to send a linebacker. You should be able to get one of your edges out there to give him some help. So they're going to have to play better. Russell Wilson, he's not necessarily the Russell Wilson of old. However, he does have enough left to handle the Raiders if the Raiders don't play smart, if the Raiders can't get pressure on him. But at home, I think the Raiders are going to pull it out. I'll take the Raiders -2.5 on this one. I think the matchup is going to be Davante Adams and Patrick Surtain. That could be good. If they throw to Davante Adams, again, 5 catches, 36 yards, that's not why you brought him in. So I don't know what that was. Now, not to take anything away from anybody, and especially I would be remiss to not mention this Holland kid that came out and racked up 150-something yards, ran down on special teams and was throwing stuff in his body out of the, out of the end zone. What a fantastic game. It was nice to see that if you couldn't have Hunter Renfrow on the line in your receiving core, wow, what a gem. They found a real diamond in the rough there.
Yeah, I've the last 2 or 3 years been watching Mac Hollins for the Eagles. Obviously, that wide receiver room got a little too cramped for him, but it's really good to see him go to the Raiders, get opportunities, and make the most of those opportunities.
Correct.
And I do need to apologize. I don't know what happened last night. I must have got my who's home and who's away a little mixed up, because I had this as Denver, the home team, but luckily Raider Jim was on top of it. So I'll throw a little curveball, because in my mind, I was thinking like how is Denver the favorite at home? Now it makes a little more sense. I'm still going to take Denver here, though. When it's all said and done, I think Denver has a better defense. I think Denver has more weapons offensively. Quarterback wise, I'm going to give the edge to Russell Wilson only because of the experience and the smarts. No disrespect to Carr. Yeah, Carr is a great quarterback, and I think he's really endeared himself to the Raider fans over the last few years. Obviously, would have liked a little more here and there, but when it comes down to it, Carr, I think, is an above average and serviceable quarterback, as is Russell Wilson. But like I said, there's not too many schemes that you're going to throw at Russell Wilson that he doesn't know what to do with. Now, is he going to make those same plays he made 5 years ago? That's another story, but I think he can read the defense. And as you talked about, that the secondary leaves a lot to be desired. And if you are able to circle that Max Crosby and double him all game, and they don't do anything to kind of counteract that, this could be trouble. Now, in terms of the over-under, it's hard for me to pick over on this one, just because, watching the Broncos offense last week, my goodness, I felt like I should have got paid to watch that game. That was just a grind. Just as a fan to watch that game. 11-10. Luckily, the closer came in and closed it out in the bottom of the 9th. I mean, that's a baseball score in Colorado, essentially. But I do like what I saw enough out of the Raiders overall, because The Raiders probably should have lost that game by 10, 12 points, 14 points. They were struggling most of that game. The fact that they essentially had an opportunity to send that game to overtime, I think that's something to be, to at least hang your hat on. However, if you're Josh McDaniels right now, you got to be looking around going, okay, it's been a long time since I won a football game as a head coach.
Yeah.
When's this going to break through? Could be this week, but I just, as a bettor, I'm just going to ride with the team that I've seen that I'm a little more impressed with. And that's not saying a whole lot, but that is the Denver Broncos. And I will take the under, at least until I can see these offenses be a little more consistent.
And to support your pick in this game, the other thing that's in your favor is, I understand Nate Hobbs is not going to be playing. Like, the secondary needs problems. But yeah, apparently he hurt his knee and is questionable. And if that happens, you better get some pressure somewhere.
I'll try and, who knows, maybe that could be a blessing in disguise. I don't want to see anybody get hurt. I want everyone to be healthy. I want the best players on the field at all times, but maybe it forces the defensive coordinator to go, okay, we got to switch some things up and, maybe get some life into that defense. Cause as you've said, they're, Ryan Tannehill to tear you up like that, it's a little tough to see, but we'll see how Russell Wilson does this weekend. Moving on to, I think, maybe the best game of the weekend. We have a rematch of a Super Bowl a few years back. The Kansas City Chiefs. This will be Sunday Night Football. Kansas City will be 1.5-point favorites as they head to Tampa. The over-under here is 45. Right before we got rolling, I did a quick little glance at the weather. It doesn't seem like Tampa will be affected too much by that. Doesn't expect to have any rain. Wind's going to be up to maybe 10, 15 miles an hour. So that's something to keep an eye on. But I mean, I'm sure what's going on in the city right now is probably pales in comparison what will be going on Sunday. Don't expect weather to be a factor, but at the same time, it is a hurricane. So we'll see how that goes. But Raider Jim, what are your thoughts? Chiefs heading to Tampa as a 1.5-point favorite.
Now, you look at both of these teams in their week 3 performance, and you've got the shell-shocked Chiefs who lost to the Colts. And then, for gosh sakes, Tampa Bay goes out, shuts out the Packers in the second half, and they still lost. Their offense just hasn't been productive. So, and that's not to the fault of Brady. He does get Mike Evans back this week. He does get his standard left tackle back, Donovan Smith. They are both should be back this week. Now, the Kansas City game was a real surprise to me and a lot of people, but I think it was last year during the podcast, we alluded to, each of us at different times during the season, Kansas City, they're good. They're a dynamo, but they get a little bit exposed every now and then. The coach on Tampa Bay has bested Kansas City before. He can best them again. And they're running this defense right now. They do this 3 safety look. And let me tell you, a 3 safety look really makes offensive coordinators pause because you're not really sure what's going to happen. Mahomes still has Travis Kelce, and they still have Kelce to deal with. But in this 3 safety look, they got a kid out there, Antoine Winfield Jr. He might be the best option. You can slow Kelce down. You're not going to stop it. But if you can just be somebody who annoys him, you might have that guy in Winfield Jr. So I still think at 1.5 points, yeah, I'll take Tampa Bay in this one. You can take 2 points. You can take money line. I think it's going to close up a little bit. And then you also have that thing. Remember when Katrina hit down in in New Orleans, and that team, the Saints, came through, and they were just this great thing for the community at the time, to recover and give them hope and something positive to look at. Watch for that factor in the game when Tampa Bay takes the field on Sunday. I think the Kansas City loses back-to-back for the first time in a long time. And I do think it'll even go over 45.
Yeah, I like that ending right there, that X factor, if you will, of the, kind of playing for the fans, playing for the people who have been obviously, unfortunately affected by it. This is tough. I was just looking over Tom Brady's stats. it's not anything that, to write home about, but it's, as you said, he's not the reason they lost last week. He actually had his best game of the season last year. His completion percentage over 70. He didn't throw an interception. The one thing that jumped out to me though, looking over his stats, is 3 games, 6 sacks. That's something that has to improve, not just for the health of the team, but Brady, he's not coming back if he's going to get sacked every single game.
Yeah.
And at that point, that's going to make things difficult. He's, still playing at a high level, but he is still 40 plus years old. And anybody who's gotten a little older knows, I mean, shoot, I get out of bed too quickly and I'm hurting for the next 2 days.
In baseball, they have the Mendoza line. When I start seeing some of these sack numbers, I think I call it the car line. From a couple of years ago when he got sacked 51 times or some ridiculous
number. Let's bring his brother into the mix too. When he was a rookie with the Texans, the expansion team,
yeah.
he got, I think Burrow broke the record last year, but for a while, David Carr was the leader of the sack in a single season. But this is a tough one for me. Personally, if I'm being honest, I'm probably just going to sit back Sunday night and enjoy the game. Unless the line moves, in a crazy way. I do, in terms of the over under here, and unless I see something different, I got to take the under. I know that sounds kind of crazy. Kansas City, obviously that offense, the weapons, things like that. Well, guess what? The strength of the Buccaneers is the defense has been the defense. And I think this is a team, as you talked about, Raheem Morris was the defensive coordinator 2 years ago when he was the one who shut down Mahomes and won the Buccaneers a Super Bowl in that Super Bowl. So I think he has the roadmap to success in this one. But in terms of the over under, I like the under here. I think we're going to see a 20-17 game. That's going to be interesting and exciting, but not that shootout that maybe we would have seen out of these two quarterbacks, say 3 or 4 years ago. I think the defense will both defenses will play a bigger factor in this one. Just for the sake of the podcast, I do agree with you though, Raider Jim. If you hold a gun to my head, make me bet on this one. I'd take Tampa money line. I'd feel good with Tom Brady at home on Sunday night, getting some points. I think I'd feel okay, even if that ends up being a loss. It is what it is. But moving on to the final AFC West game that we'll be talking about this weekend, you have the Chargers coming off of one of the bigger surprising losses, getting blown out by the Jaguars at home. They're going to be 7.5-point favorites. They're sticking in the AFC South. They head to Houston. The over-under here sits at 44. Raider Jim, what are your thoughts?
I'll tell you what. That is one beat-up team. The Chargers, that is one beat-up team. And I don't mean any disrespect, and I'm certainly not making light of it, but it's almost like we should have had a little side chart on who are we going to be talking about. Christian McCaffrey is out, or Joey Bosa's out. It's like you can set your watch by these guys. One of them is going to be out within the first 5 weeks of the season. And I saw him walk out, and I was like, there it is. There it was. He made it through 2.5 games, and he's out again. And I understand he's not going to be playing this week either.
Yeah, he'll be out.
Yeah, he's out. They lost their left tackle.
Yep.
Herbert's got the rib thing going on still. It's just, wow, they've got so much going on against them as far as the injuries go that I don't know that 7.5 is a very good line. I think Houston's going to stay in the game. Chargers, do they get the victory? Probably, but I think Houston's going to definitely beat the spread on this one. The over/under, it'll probably go over just because they're in Houston. But wow, the Chargers have a long game ahead of them, I think. And again, as I always refer to, and you refer to, study your films from the game before. Jacksonville took those guys apart. It was amazing what they did. And okay, so sit down, watch that, all you coordinators. How'd they do it? What did they do? How did they execute? Do we have the tools to do that? Let's replicate the effort.
Yeah, the injury bug for the Chargers is at the front of all of their fans' minds and at the team's mind right now. I do know Keenan Allen practiced this week. Speaking of another guy who struggles to stay healthy. So that may help, because I will say last week when I was watching the game, I went over to my mom and stepdad's house, and they're still Charger fans, and we were watching that game. And what I realized is there's just not enough weapons for Justin Herbert. I look around and I go, man, Hunter Henry would look really good in this offense right now. Not there, obviously. You got Mike Williams, who unfortunately for Raider Jim had a really big game week 1 that kind of propelled them to get that victory. But other than that, it's kind of a bunch of warm bodies. Once again, no disrespect. These guys are more athletic than I will ever be. But at an NFL level, you leave a little bit to be desired. And I think for Austin Eckler, he looks around and goes, guys, I need someone else. I can't have, me coming out of the backfield and having a safety and a linebacker on me. I need someone to stretch the field to open that safety up. We'll see if that happens. I completely agree with you, though. 7.5 here. Chargers may get the win. And I say may. I mean, this is one, depending on what the money line is, game time. Maybe you take a look at it. Because Houston is, I don't want to say on par with Jacksonville. I do think Jacksonville's a little bit better coached and has better weapons. However, I think Davis Mills is a very serviceable quarterback. I think he's kind of a poor man's Joe Flacco. He's going to go out there. He's going to keep you in ball games. He's not going to lose a lot of games for you. He will make mistakes, but it won't be devastating. I'm going to take Houston plus 7.5 all day at home. And then the over-under, I agree with you. We're going to see some points being scored. Neither of these defenses really wow me. Derwin James, obviously, is a game changer, things like that. But I also do believe Lovie Smith isn't going to stretch the field. I don't think we're going to see Derwin James deep down the field on a 30-yard bomb from Davis Mills, where it's going to be a lot of dink and dunk. It's going to be trying to run the football and just keep things manageable. And the way for Houston to do that, protect the football. And I think Davis Mills will be able to do that. So yeah, I agree with you. 7.5 for Houston. Give me that plus 7.5 in the over 44. Time to move on to the NFC East, and we will start with the team we just spoke about, the Jacksonville Jaguars. They had some fun last week in LA. Probably enjoyed being on the road and having a somewhat mellow crowd. Well, that all ends this week when they head to Philadelphia to take on the undefeated Eagles. The Eagles are 6.5-point favorites here. The over-under sits at 47. Obviously, I'm going to get this one started. Being the Eagle fanatic I am. Looking at the Eagles' schedule, obviously the first 3 weeks, I think when we did the preview, I said, we got a real shot of going 4 or 5-0 to start the year. And now you take a look at it and you go, there's a real good shot. The Eagles are 10-0 heading into week 12 to face the Packers. Now, do I think that's going to happen? Probably not. There's probably going to be 1 or 2 games where they slip up. Personally, I kind of thought the Washington game could be a bit of a slip up. That wasn't the case. I'll be perfectly fine being wrong if they are 10-0. I do think they drop a game or 2. However, I don't think this is the one. I just think they're on such a high right now. And it is a reunion. It's the second straight week of a kind of Super Bowl reunion for the Eagles. Last week, it was Carson Wentz. This week, it will be Doug Peterson. Be interested to see how he's received. I sure hope he gets a great standing ovation. Obviously, he won us the Super Bowl. I know there are plenty of people say Frank Reich did. That's not true. Frank Reich may add a hand in it, but you know what? Doug Peterson was the head chef for that in that kitchen, and it'll be nice to see him back. And for Jacksonville, I've said it multiple times on this podcast, they have gotten away from rookie head coach, rookie quarterback. Now they have a young quarterback and a proven head coach. And that's what we saw last week. As you talked about the film, they were prepared and the Chargers weren't. I think we saw a big disparity in coaching there. Doug Peterson going to come in. That could be something to keep an eye on. However, until I see something different, I'm going to ride with the Eagles. 6.5. I think they can cover it. I think they're, looking at maybe a 7 to a 10-point victory. And for Jacksonville, maybe they're feeling themselves a little bit. I'm sure there are a lot of attention. I mean, they're in first place for consecutive weeks, probably first time since Blake Bortles was doing his thing back in the day. So I'm going to take the Eagles. I am going to take the under, though. And a lot of it's what I talked about early on. It's that Eagle defense. I know 38 points were put up by Jacksonville last week. Well, now you're going to Philly, a very tough place to play against probably the best defense statistically in football right now. I think Trevor Lawrence spends a lot of time either escaping or falling victim to the pass rush. And I think the Eagles get the job done. They win this one by, like I said, 7 or 10 points, maybe more, but I'm going to take the under 47. Raider Jim, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I'll tell you, Philadelphia just got after Wentz last week. Oh my, I think they hit him 9 times.
Mm-hmm.
And the difference in that game and this game, I watched the Jacksonville line on Sunday. They're pretty darn good. Their offensive line is pretty good. I think the Eagles will still bring the pressure. I don't think they will get to Lawrence. And Lawrence is definitely, if he just keeps playing the way he did last week, and the Jacksonville defense also very, very good. So I'm with you on the under because I'm kind of surprised it's at 47. I don't think it's going to be so much of a shootout as it is going to be a tactical game, cerebral game, and it's going to be who makes who causes the one turnover or who pulls out a play that somebody wasn't expecting. So you might go right down to 24 to 20, 24 to 21, something like that. And I think Jacksonville's going to cover. I think Philadelphia gets the win. They're still undefeated at the end of it. But boy, this is going to be a great, great game, and it's going to be a lot of defense on this one, both sides. It's going to be who makes the mistake.
Yeah.
Whoever makes the mistake, the second turnover, that's going to be the difference. So give me Jacksonville to cover, and then I would even go an extra half point. Probably just take Jacksonville -7, but definitely under 47 on that one.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting one this weekend. Obviously, Philly, those fans, they're fired up, and they're going to be ready for it. Yeah, they are. It's a really fun team. The one thing I will say for the Eagles, though, if there's one thing I could nitpick, second half offense. It's been 2 weeks in a row they haven't scored in the second half. Haven't really needed to. I mean, obviously you want to, but you're not gonna be able to get shut out in the second half and win a Super Bowl going forward. So they're gonna have to figure that out. But once again, kind of nitpicking for a team that's really dominated the first 3 weeks at least. So moving on to the other NFC East matchup. This will be an divisional matchup. You have the Commanders heading to Dallas. Dallas is 3-point favorites here. The over-under is 41.5. Now, week 1, Dallas obviously did not look good. And it was kind of compounded with the fact of Dak Prescott going down. It was very, very tough for them to deal with. And I think a lot of people wrote him off, myself included. Cooper Rush has come in and the offense is built to kind of be simplistic, and they go out and they get the job done. I know last week you talked about Micah Parsons. He's the leader of that defense, and that defense needs to continue to perform because as good as Rush has been, this isn't a guy that you can hope to put up 31 points a game. And that's not what he's doing. That's not what he's going to do going forward. But when it's all said and done, you see a game like this with a spread of Dallas -3. Well, we've all kind of known that Vegas gives 3 points to the home team just straight up. So what Vegas is telling me is if Washington and Dallas were in London this weekend, it would be a pick 'em. Well, in that case, I am all about Dallas. I'd probably bet myself a half point down. Give me Dallas -2.5 just to cover that, that field goal winner. But I do like Dallas in this one. I just think Washington, they're a little adrift right now. In terms of the over under 41.5, excuse me. It's such a low number. I do think they get over it. A 24-21 game, something like that. That's how I could see it going. So I will take the over, but I'm much more confident in Dallas -3 or 2.5, however you want to play it. But Raider Jim, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think here's what it comes down to. Again, what do you say? Dallas isn't supposed to be where they're at right now. And Washington, God love them, they're out there, they're giving their all. Here's going to be the difference in this one. Commanders have given up 14 sacks. Cowboys have sacked the opposing quarterback 13 times, and there's going to be your difference. Also, Washington has a little trouble defending against the run, so any semblance of a running game, and that's going to be enough to keep Dallas covering the spread in this one. So I like Dallas. I'll take them covering the spread, but I'm with you. I think it's going to go under on this one.
Yeah,
I don't see them I don't see them being a big offensive game. Pretty much I had the same thing in my mind. It's like, what are we going to see, like 24-17 type of a thing.
Yeah. I think that might even be the max, honestly. And you brought it up. The Eagles probably overall have a better defense, but that defensive pass rush for the Cowboys is going to be very difficult. And, I obviously you can game plan and you can try and scheme, but this is 3 weeks in and they're averaging close to 5 sacks allowed a game. That's got to improve, especially as much as I love Carson Wentz. He is not exactly an Iron Man back there. He's not as made of glass, like I think a lot of people say, but he's definitely not Brett Favre or Phillip Rivers back there. So keep an eye on that. So our final NFC East game will be Chicago heading to the Meadowlands to take on the Giants. Giants obviously lost last week in a bit of a heartbreaker. They are no longer undefeated, but they are going to be 3.5-point favorites in this one. And we have our lowest spread of the weekend that we'll be talking about, at least 39.5. Watching the Giants Monday night, obviously you look and they go, okay, they lost the game, blah, blah, blah. I was still impressed with what I saw out of the Giants. Mainly Saquon Barkley. This is a guy very similar to Christian McCaffrey that probably has that injury prone tag on him for better or worse, whether it's deserved or not. But I saw him last week or on Monday night and really throughout the season. And he not only looks healthy, but he's running healthy. He's making cuts without, kind of second guessing himself. Cause when you do mess up those knees, that's what you think about, right? When you make those cuts, is it going to happen again? He doesn't have that fear. And the big part of that, if Saquon Barkley can be the focal point of this offense, I firmly believe it's the only way Daniel Jones can be successful. I know that sounds terrible to say, but Daniel Jones cannot be the focal point of the offense. And I think the Giants have things in place that can make that be the case. I'd probably bet it down, get closer to 3. I'd hope I could find somewhere where it's 3 so I could bet it down to 2.5. I do like the Giants in this one, but at -3.5, I'd take Chicago. I think this is a field goal game one way or another. In terms of the over under, I'm going to take the under. I know it sounds crazy, but this has a 17-14, 17-16 written all over it. But it's going to be an interesting game when it's all said and done. Raider Jim, what are your thoughts? The Bears underdogs as they head to New York.
Yeah, the Giants did lose last week. Was that Daniel Jones' fault? Can you put that on him, or can you put it on his offensive line? And I say it goes on his offensive line. They didn't do him many favors. And both of these guys, Fields on the Bear side, Jones on the Giants side, they have been sacked 23 times. 13 for Jones, Fields 10 times already. The Giant rush defense is very, very suspect. And even though David Montgomery isn't going to be in the backfield for the Bears, Khalil Herbert ran for like 150 yards. He ran out of his mind last week. So you got to watch that. And that keeps Chicago in the game, but not enough, because what you alluded to, and I agree, Saquon Barkley, he's going to be the difference. So I see the Giants winning this one, easily covering the spread. I would like you, I'd probably take it down to 3. If I can find 3, I'll take it to 2.5, but definitely the under 2. Might even pop that up to buy a half point and take it to 40 and go under 40 on it.
Yeah, this is going to be one that, if you have to watch the game, enjoy football, but it wouldn't be one I would be running people over to see. But we'll see how it goes, going forward. The one thing I will say with Justin Fields, I don't know the exact stat and what it was, but he led the NFL in pretty much missing open targets. And that's something that has to improve, especially for the Bears, because that offense doesn't scream target or scream weapons. So right. When those weapons do get open, you need to take advantage of it. I'm a little worried Justin Fields is maybe relying a little too much on his overall athleticism at this level, which may work against some teams, but eventually it will catch up to you. I don't think you can ever be elite being a kind of a run first quarterback. So we'll see how that goes. But moving on to, speaking of run first quarterbacks, we got the Buffalo Bills, who obviously had their struggles last week. They head to Baltimore, 3-point favorites to face Lamar Jackson and the Ravens in Baltimore. The over-under here sits at 51. Raider Jim, what are your thoughts? Buffalo 3-point favorites as they head to Baltimore.
Boy, this could be the game of the weekend. I know earlier I alluded to the fact or said that Kansas City and Tampa Bay, this may be the first time in a long time you see the Chiefs lose back to back. You may see Buffalo lose back to back. They're going into Lamar's house, and he's just playing out of his mind right now. Buffalo -3 on the road. I don't think I can take that one. Not after what I saw last week. And from both sides, not a dig on Buffalo and not overlooking anything that they have talent-wise. I just think Baltimore is going to come out at home. They cover the spread for sure. And I think it's definitely you're going to see over. I think it's going to be one of those old school shootouts.
Yeah, I think this game is going to be that shootout, crazy, kind of like the Chiefs and Rams. I think it was supposed to be in Mexico City, but I think they played at the Coliseum, and it was like 52-45, something like that. I think we're going to see a similar type of shootout there, and I think that Kansas City Tampa Bay game will be a little more close to the vest, a little more a bit of a grinder game. But I agree with you. I think we're going over 51. We might hit over 51 by the end of the third quarter, the way these teams have played lately. And in terms of I agree with you. After what I saw from Buffalo last week, and conversely what I've seen from Lamar Jackson and the Ravens, you give me that, I'll take 3. I'll buy a half point plus 3.5. Buffalo wins by a field goal, tip my hat and take my money. This is a game that I think we're going to look back on week 16, 17, 18, maybe even early in the playoffs and go, okay, that was a turning point for the Ravens, or conversely the Bills. But I do think it's the Ravens. They're looking in that division going, okay, maybe our toughest opponent is 1-2 right now. We can get a win right here. They get themselves into a really good spot. And I think it would make a statement beating the Bills, because as much as they struggled last week, I still think a lot of us feel that Buffalo is a force to be reckoned with in the AFC, but so is Baltimore. I think we're going to see possibly a AFC West or AFC championship preview, the way it's been going lately. So right. Yeah, I'll take Baltimore. Like I said, +3, love to get +3.5 over 51. Moving on to Monday Night Football. We have an NFC West showdown. The Rams will head to San Francisco to take on the Niners. The Niners are 1.5-point favorites. The over-under is 42, and something that really caught my eye yesterday when I was putting this together, according to Vegas Insider, the line opened at 51 points. It's now down to 42. So as we always kind of do, sometimes we go, what do they know that we don't? And when I say they now, I'm speaking about the bettors, not Vegas, because Vegas put down 51 and the bettors said, okay. And Vegas kind of counteracted, like, okay, it's all the way down to 42. But Raider Jim, what are your thoughts? Monday Night Football, the Rams heading to San Francisco.
I think the big matchup or the big factor is going to be this. The Rams defense has to know where Debo's going to be for the entire game, all 60 minutes. Even when he's not on the field, you need to know where he's at on the sidelines, because he's that dangerous. And on the other side of the ball, the 49er offense needs to know where Bobby Wagner is, because he played like a madman against Arizona. He had 9 tackles by himself, and he's going to be looking for the 49ers out there. Rams, though, proved earlier in the season that they're human, and they're going to be on the road in San Francisco. I don't know what the weather is. Maybe there's a storm coming in. Maybe there's some rain, in the forecast. I don't know, but I think it's going to go over 42 for sure. And I would I'll take San Francisco money line on this one.
Yeah, I find myself trying to. I'm just looking over the weather right now. Doesn't look. I mean, it's going to be windy. It's going to be humid. But looks like about 60 to 70 degrees in that
just
area.
Just a Bay Area day.
Yeah, and it's definitely not candlestick type of wind, but you're still gonna have to deal with that when you go up there. For myself, I'm trying not to kind of fall into that recency bias, because if you watch San Francisco play this past weekend, it's hard for you to go positively towards San Francisco and over on the 42. I think, at least myself, I know why that line dropped from 51 to 42. And a lot of it was because what we saw Sunday night, that offense struggles. I'm going to take the Rams. I'd probably do money line, just 1.5. Like that, I would hate to see a 21-20 just come back and just bite me in the, you know what. So I'd probably take money line. But this is a game that, once again, I'm probably just going to sit back, relax, enjoy it. I do like the over, though. I think it's a low enough number that even the Niners can get there with that. And there's a lot of familiarity with these two teams as well. The Niners don't, deal with Denver too often. So I guess you could kind of say, Kyle Shanahan wasn't fully ready for that. Make whatever mistake you'd like. Well, you can't make that mistake for San Francisco offensively this week. Obviously, the Rams have a very good defense, but it's a defense that Jimmy Garoppolo has seen probably more than any other defense throughout his career. So I do think we get over that 42 line. But like I said, I think it's just going to be a really fun game to watch. A bit of a grind, maybe not the shootout. Maybe a couple years past would have yielded. But final game we'll be talking about on the podcast, it's going to be the New England Patriots as they head to Green Bay. The Packers are 9.5-point favorites. The over-under only sits at 40.5. I'll get this one started. New England is, as we've kind of said, they're starting to kind of fall back to what we expected. Mac Jones isn't Tom Brady 2.0. Bill Belichick can't just go walk down the street, grab 5 people and turn them into superstars. I think it's starting to catch up to him now. 9.5 though, that's a big number. It is in Green Bay. I'm going to take New England plus 9.5 just because I just think that Aaron Rodgers will do enough to win. But I don't think he empties everything out to beat the Patriots because I don't think he has to. I think they win by 7. They maybe win by 8, maybe even win by a field goal, but I don't think they get to double digits in terms of that. Could be wrong. In terms of 40.5, I like the over here. I mean, I know we have two good defenses here, but Aaron Rodgers, he's a guy who could anytime he could hit that by himself. So 40.5, give me the over. I could see this, just barely sneaking by. But I mean, even, you got 21-20, that gets us to where we need to go. And that's pretty low scoring for, an Aaron Rodgers game. So we'll see how that goes. Raider Jim, what are your thoughts? Pat's heading to Lambeau.
Boy, old Bill Belichick. He must wake up on the weekend on Mondays now and go, boy, it ain't what it used to be. The old gray mare, she ain't what she used to be. I understand Mac Jones is not going to be in the game this week.
Wow.
I understand he's questionable or out, and they're talking that it could be Brian Hoyer.
Wow.
And if that's the case, there's your 9.5. That's what
Brian Hoyer is still a backup quarterback in this league. Good.
Brian Hoyer or Bailey Zapp.
Okay.
Those are the two.
I'll say, Bailey Zapp, he was throwing balls to our friend Allison Ratcliffe's son at Houston Baptist. So good for him. I know he transferred. I don't know where he played his final year of college. He was at Houston Baptist somewhere else, but sorry, that just popped into my head, but continue. Sorry.
Yeah. So, I mean, and if that's the case, then, Green Bay at home, Aaron might give the fans just a little show just to say thanks for everything they've always done and for being supportive. I just looked at the weather right now, just a basic fall day in Green Bay. It's going to be mostly cloudy. It's going to be in the 60s and the 40s. No precipitation, definitely no chill, no frost, no snow. So perfect Green Bay weather conditions for them to go out and put on a show. I'll grab a point and make it under 9 on this one for Green Bay. Take me to 8.5, but I think it's going to go over. I think old Aaron's going to get out there and put up 24 for the fans, and then they'll give a couple touchdowns up to New England just because why not?
Yeah. Tell you what, nothing helps that over better than garbage time. And we have a chance to be scaring at a backdoor cover. I mean, I could see this 2-minute warning, Packers up by 14. Mac Jones, or no, I guess it would be Brian Hoyer or Bailey Zapp go down, boom, get a last second touchdown with 11 seconds left. Nobody cares except for the people who had the under in there, or had the Patriot or the Packers plus 9.5 or minus 9.5. So we'll see how that goes. Always the wild card in gambling, that those backdoor covers. Too much. But there's also the backdoor winners too. Those are fun as well. But Raider Jim, final thoughts for this edition of the NFL Weekly.
Well, hopefully my ship is going to be righted this weekend too, and when we convene next Thursday, we can say, look, we really do know what we're talking about because we had a great week last week. I think we're going to do better as every week goes on, but it's not just First Off the Bench podcast. I look at some of the numbers for some of the professionals who are getting paid to do this, and their numbers aren't going through the roof either. So will be interesting to see. There's good games out there. The Kansas City, Tampa Bay game, Buffalo, Baltimore. I think those are definitely the ones. And then, of course, near and dear to my heart, I'm going to pull for the Raiders that they get their first win of the season and start digging out of that hole they've created.
Yeah, I agree that when it comes to betting NFL football, I still think baseball is harder, but for a completely different reason, just because baseball sometimes is just an absolute coin flip in a one game situation. But with the NFL, I mean, myself personally, there's a reason I don't bet weeks 1 or 2, and it might need to turn into week 3 as well. Although I did have an average week, my first week betting, I think I pretty much broke even, paid the $5-10 vig when it was all said and done, 2-2, blah blah blah. But the biggest thing for me, it's week 4. We're getting ready to dive into week 4. The one thing that I always struggle with in the NFL season is not taking it for granted, because for myself working now this 9 to 5 job, that's what I'm looking forward to every Friday. You obviously get the weekend, but it's that Sunday and it's that opportunity to sit down and, if you watch Red Zone, that's 7 hours of commercial free football or however you want to do it. It's all about football all the time. Just enjoy it, because I hate to say it, it's going to be February, 18th before we know it.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to go into that darkness of 2 straight months of Mel Kiper and Todd McShay telling us about the draft. And it's the only thing to get excited about, which is great, but pales in comparison to a full Sunday of football. And no season goes by faster than NFL. The NFL does. So just make sure that, take a minute, enjoy it. And I do think this weekend, those 2 games we kind of focused on, Tampa Bay, Kansas City, and Buffalo, Baltimore. Those 2 games right there might be worth the price of admission by themselves.
My phone just sent me an alert saying that it is definite. The Tampa Bay game is going to be played in Tampa Bay.
Okay.
So there's that factor of something for the community to give them something positive. Watch how the Bucs play and how they respond to that.
And I also did see as well, Tom Brady has pledged, him and the team owners have pledged to give back to the disaster relief. Probably the right thing to do there. Yeah. But
wouldn't expect less from that guy.
Yeah, exactly. But Ray, with that, thank you all so much for listening to this edition of the NFL Weekly, presented by the First Off the Bench Podcast Network. Everyone comes off the bench. We are first. It's time for y'all to go wash your hands and stop hating everybody. Enjoy the weekend. We'll talk to you soon.
Peace out.